Hey, thanks for joining me. This one kind of comes out of the blue. What I mean is that I ordered it just like 3 days ago, 3 or 4 days ago, and it showed up pretty damn quick. Um, I've been aware of this one, but I've kind of avoided picking it up because these artist editions are typically very expensive. They normally have a cover price. I don't know if they list it on this thing, I don't know if they put it on there, but these things new are usually something like $150. And that makes them, you better have a lot of money or just dying to get it. Um, and I don't always have that. I have to pick and choose. And I've got certain artist editions because the artists are the ones that I grew up with and I'm just so absolutely in love with. Meaning I've got the McFarlane artist edition. I've got the Jim Lee X-Men, the Eric Larson Savage Dragon. I did pick up the John Byrne X-Men one, which I just had to get that absolutely classic art and just get to look at that masterful work. I think that's all the ones I have. I will be getting soon to be released the Rob Liefeld Youngblood one. Gotta have that. How can I not? But it's from an era of Liefeld's work where I was still kind of into his work and the black and white line work that he does. We'll get into that. The point I'm getting at is that I didn't grow up with this work exactly. There is a little bit that I did. But it's one of those I'm like, it's on my, I need to get, but it can wait. This one can wait. And I'm glad I did. I just was kind of casually flipping through Amazon online, and I don't know what made me think to look it up, but I found this goddamn thing for like $49, plus shipping, of course. I'm like, $49 when they're normally $150. Had to order it, had to get it. I'm like, okay, let's do this. So I have flipped through this. It's one of the first things I did today when I got home. Saw it sitting on my porch, and I'm like, I bet I know what this was. I actually thought, oh yeah, that reminds me. I thought for a second that I have also coming the J. Scott Campbell Danger Girl Artist Edition. For some reason, I thought that's what this was because one of my buddies was telling me that it should be arriving soon, and I kind of forgot that I'd ordered this one because I did it on such a whim. I'm like, oh shit, order, boom, send. I just kind of put it out of my mind. So when I flipped it open, I was like, oh my God, it's going to be the J. Scott Campbell. Oh, no, right. Oh, right. It's the Daredevil one. I forgot that I got that. So I did flip through this first thing when I got home from work today. Of course, it's great. But there's one thing that I kind of like. I don't know if this has been brought up. It says Frank Miller's Daredevil. So, I take this as a Frank Miller artist edition, but it's not necessarily a Frank Miller artist edition specifically as much as it is just his Daredevil work artist edition. What's the difference? Well, I was sitting here thinking about this is not exclusively, the brilliance of the art is not exclusively Frank Miller. It's the inks from Klaus Janson. And I'm like, how can you leave his name off of this? I don't know for sure, but my understanding is that Klaus Janson's inks, I mean, obviously Frank Miller pencils and gives it the composition and the detail and basic indications of lighting, but Klaus Janson's inking gives it the finish that's distinctive, gives it the distinctive look that is, from an artistic perspective, it's almost a 50-50. There's one thing for the artist who, does the majority of the mileage of so also in the case of this stuff, Frank Miller's writing it and he does the scripting as far as I understand it. He does all of that, but then he has to break down each page. He's got to do the layouts and the basic figure work and the panels and the compositions and pencil the whole thing. And you hand it off and an inker doesn't have to worry about any of that stuff. He just has to finish the art. So yes, the penciler typically has a greater list of things to do. But my understanding is that the pencils were not super tight. And Klaus Janson's inks it's more than just inking him, it's finishing him. That's my understanding. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who know more than me. I would love some clarification. But I just remember flipping through this thing a couple hours ago, and I'm like, This should have Klaus Jansson's name on it as well. This is all about him just as much as Frank in terms of the art. Now, they're trying to sell it as Frank Miller's Daredevil. Sure, but we're not reading this shit. Yes, everything's lettered, but they're just sporadic pages. So this is just showcasing the art. And like Klaus Jansson's name should be up there. So it doesn't ruin anything, but it does kind of bother me. Love this interior page, the inside cover where they take a small couple of panels from a specific book and blow it up and make it huge. You could see like the whiteout lumped into here. And I know this exact scene. There's one of my favorite things in all of comics is in this book. We'll get into it as we get closer, but I love the using the inside front cover space. Some books you get like this and it's just blank white. When it's an artist driven thing, use this surface for God's sakes. What could you possibly, what reason would you not do that? God, I'm sitting here looking at these great fence lines and how I'm wondering if these were painted in. Looks like kind of a combination of inked around it, but no, as I get closer on it, it looks like they were 100% painted in. And if you can see that clearly, it's like, because this panel is a lot smaller than this in the original artwork, so I wonder what they used. But it's not like it's flawless, perfect lines. They're kind of chunky and little blobs of roundness and double lines and stuff like that, but it doesn't have to be perfect. That's something that I kind of struggle with on my own art, is like everything has to be a flawless, perfect line, and I can never get it that way, but that's the goal. But when you actually look at original artwork and you see it up close, it's often kind of a mess, for lack of a better term. And that's just interesting how it's just painted in. Great fence line of all the weird random things to look at. So here's your inside cover. Big close-up on another figure. Again, I'm sure the original artwork on this is many orders of magnitude times smaller. But it's interesting to see these ink lines up close. Really neat. And then it gives a breakdown of where everything comes from. Well, the thing that I was most interested in, and I was kind of surprised at, Daredevil 181. Look at how many pages they have. 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 17, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, missing 26, 27, missing 28, 29, and 30. Besides 175, that's the longest run. And Daredevil 181, that's the issue where Bullseye kills Elektra. Daredevil 181, I don't remember how old I was. I might have been 10, 1987. Maybe I was 11, something like that. And I was kind of getting into comics, and some kid that I knew, just some buddy of mine, just ran across a pile of comics in his house. He didn't know where they came from, so he brought them to me and gave them to me. And Daredevil 181 was in that pile. And that was my introduction to Daredevil, to Bullseye, to Elektra, and to Frank Miller. That's the first time I ever knew anything about these characters. I was aware of the existence of Daredevil on a microscopic level. But yeah, this was my first introduction to all those characters, and what an introduction. I've actually reviewed that book twice on my channel. First time years ago, and then recently I got a couple more issues before and after that. So it's kind of fun to kind of revisit that. But I love the fact that they have all these pages from 181 in here, because I have gone over that book a billion times as a younger kid. I didn't understand the brilliance that I was looking at. I was enthralled. I was engrossed with the story. It's a huge book. I think it's like 48 pages. The story was a perfect self-contained thing. It was dramatic. It was kind of horrifying watching Elektra get killed so brutally. And then Daredevil's fight with Bullseye at the end. That's one of my most memorable and formative comic experiences, is Daredevil 181. And to get to see these pages in their original form, raw scan, and so many of them, that is fantastic. That works for me so well. I mean, that shot right there is right out of that book. Looks great. So a lot of these other pages, most of these other ones, I've never seen before because I wasn't collecting the book. It's fascinating to see. I talk about this anytime I look through these artist editions, how some of these pages have just yellowed so terribly. And some of them much worse than this. You can see how the corners are cut up for whatever that reason is that they get cut up when they get, I think back in the day, art was photographed, I think, for print, because they didn't have digital scanners. The only thing they could do is photograph, and I don't know if they had to chop it up, but some of these pages are terribly yellowed and just chopped to shit. But there's a lot of pages. Like, look at this bright white one. Like, this one's been obviously kind of cared for and kept out of the sun and out of a smoker's, out of a smoker's presence, as compared to like this one. But yeah, so Frank Miller, at least on this issue, this page, Frank Miller pencils and Joseph Rubinstein and Klaus Janson on inks. I love the use. There's a lot of use of Zipatone all over the place. And I'm sure everyone listening understands what Zipatone is, but for that one person who doesn't know, there's sheets of these patterns that you can get, and they all kinds of different patterns and gradations and stuff like that you can just put on a thing and then cut out the part you want to keep and then peel the stuff off, and you get that gray pattern. You got it there. You got it there. There's even kind of like a Zipatone halo effect around Hulk's arm there. A lot of Zipatone in the stuff that I noticed. And man, if I did digital comics, or, I'll never do digital comics, but if I had the technology and the know-how, I would do a lot of digital Zipatone on top of my original artwork. I don't have the means to do that. I don't know how to go about that. There's another great shot. All the rooftops have got that little kind of mid-tone on it that's more zip cut out onto that. So, going to kind of zip through some of these pages, because there's a whole book to look through here, and I want to focus on some other stuff. But just getting to see the original artwork like this, just knowing that at one point Frank Miller was sitting on a page just like this, drawing it in, and then Klaus was coming in. If I don't know, again, anybody who knows better, correct me, but I'm pretty certain that Klaus Janson is almost exclusively brushwork, and that's the stuff that it like really stands out. Now, again, these pages were, I think it said, had Joseph Rubinstein doing some of them. Nope, on this one's just all Klaus. So anyway, I feel like his work is all brush, and it just kind of shows, a nib is a sharper line, but this stuff looks like almost all brush work. You can see a difference in, like, if you can see that the black on the figures is much darker than the lines on the stairs. So I'm guessing you use some kind of maybe non-archival ink, maybe a pen for these thin, straight, perfect lines. It's super huge pain in the ass to do that shit with the brush. So you use some kind of pen, but the ink fades over time. And that's why those stairs and the window behind them and a couple other things, the backgrounds back here, some of these things, they just don't have that raw, deep black ink like you use with an India ink on so many of these other things. So that's kind of interesting to see. Wonder what the choice of tools were that he uses. And I love these close-ups on the eye and these nice, heavy, thick brush lines. I wonder if Klaus just is good enough to just throw the line and stop at the border every time he throws these lines. Or maybe he starts from over here and brings it into the black, because you don't have to worry about, because then you could come in and throw in the eyelashes on that. But I wonder, my natural inclination when I ink is to throw it left to right. But, or what I do is I take a yellow Post-it note and I put it on the edge right across the border so that I can throw the line and go on to the yellow Post-it note, not worrying about stopping before I come to the border so I don't make it look ugly. And then once you're done, you just take the Post-it note off and it's a perfect clean line. Love to know what some of these artists do. Anyway, love the atmospheric sky going on there. That's really cool. Boy, does Frank Miller do some great fight scenes in these books. In a way that you just kind of don't see in a lot of comics anymore. There's something different and unique about the way that he does it. But I want to obviously get to some of the stuff I'm more familiar with. Interesting shot on Elektra's face, where she's kind of got the casual like smile on her face almost. He makes her look a little bit more sinister as the storylines go on. Great shots here. Such an iconic costume design on Elektra, with the outfit cut across, the bare legs, the sash, the hanging dress design, whatever it is, the bandana. Really great. Again, great atmospheric backgrounds. That looks really great. drawing people kissing is hard. I've said that a bunch of times. That looks really cool. God, look at how yellow these pages are. Good Lord. I wonder what kind of environment they sit in to get this yellow. Yeah, let's keep zipping through here. One of Bullseye and Daredevil's earlier fights, beating the shit out of each other. This interesting gun design that Bullseye has that Frank Miller seemed to really like. It almost looks like Han Solo's blaster, but there's a specific gun in one of these later pages that he uses very specifically that he seems like he likes to have Bullseye have. This page, a lot of Zipatone. I wonder if that color is what the color of the Zipatone is, or if it's kind of faded over time. It's a really interesting use to have her in front of this the Venetian blinds, and so the light's coming through, so you got to kind of have rim lighting on the figure. Really interesting, odd but cool pose. I think it looks really good. I like the face. That looks really cool. Yeah, Frank Miller story and art and Klaus Janson finished art. This should have more of a hype for Klaus Janson's work. Yeah, loving anytime there's a shot like that. That looks awesome right there. Great storytelling. This stuff looks all fantastic. Love the ninja design. It's funny, it's like I think the first time that I remember seeing the hand ninjas in this design was when Jim Lee was drawing them in Uncanny X-Men. And so I've just kind of assumed that this specific design is a Frank Miller or originated thing. Do I have that correct? But whenever I think of ninjas, that's the design I instinctively want to put them in. It's like the loose, billowy shirt and kind of little strappy things around the arms and legs. When I think ninjas, that's the design that comes to mind because I saw Jim Lee do it in those Uncanny X-Men issues, and I'm guessing that was all just pulled straight from here. Very cool. Just keep going. Let's keep going because I'm going to stop and spend some time on some other pages coming up later. Great lighting on that shot there. There's that Zipatone in the background, and then like hand painted on with, I don't know if it's like white acrylic paint or something, white out, whatever it might be, with these little, I've noticed that this happens a lot where there's these glinting parts, and I assume this is all Klaus Janson, and it looks so perfect with all these little flicks of white coming out to be that glowing, sparkle, bright light. You got it there. It's all over the place in these books. And I'm like, man, what a sharp hand to be able to make those sharp lines in the white on top of the black ink. Fantastic stuff. Great fight scenes going on here. So great. Yeah. More fighting, more hand ninjas. Elektra's kicking the shit out of these guys. I like that, stabbing them through the guts on the side there. I like the silhouette top panel. That looks great. Like I said, Frank Miller does some of the best like fight choreography in these things. Fantastic. Love the use of the Daredevil face with the heavy Zipatone, giving it the, you got the heavy blacks and the white highlight and then the mid-range tone with the zip. Very cool. Let's keep going. Anytime someone effectively uses silhouette stuff, that looks very Sin City beyond the obvious reasons where it's just straight silhouette shot. But you can kind of see where Frank Miller was going to go in the future. And doing all silhouette is hard because you got to make sure what you're doing is extremely clear. This ninja, I like how he's coming through. He's got the sword in him. Very big upper body, but I think it looks great. And more great fight scenes. Look at all this crazy action. God damn, is it so great. Most fight scenes seem to be just like a page with like a panel or two of people like grunting and screaming at each other and throwing a haymaker fist or something like that. And then like one finishing move and it's over. But this is like a choreographed fight scene. Like ducking, stabbing, clacking weapons, throwing stars, having to dive out of the way, kicking something at him, throwing something at him. It's like a choreographed battle that just keeps going on. Love the heavy silhouette with the rim lighting on the art there. Guy on Fire is great. This shot looks so good. I can't tell you how much I love this atmospheric, like the clouds. It's kind of dry brushed on, and then it looks like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, you're going to be able to see it, but as I bring it up to look at it, where like you've got the solid white and then there's the solid black, but the transitions from the black to white is like, it looks like a fingerprint where the ink, like literally the artist gets some ink on his finger and he dabs and pushes on it to give it a specific kind of pattern that gives it kind of a gray tone. And that is some of my favorite like atmospheric clouds I've ever seen. It looks so good. And there's no way that Frank can pencil that in. That is all an inker making that choice. Like obviously Frank penciled in clouds somehow, some way, somewhere, but this specific kind of fingerprint inking, that's got to be all clouds. Like that is, so much of this art is him. I like the kind of the brush stroke lines to be like the rain and the clouds. The atmospherics of that shot are spectacular. So cool. I've been aware of people doing the thumbprint thing. I've never tried it. And whenever I ink, I get shit all over my hands, but I never stopped to think to like, let me try and do that and see what it does. One of these days I'll remember and actually give it a shot. So then, here's the thing with Matt Murdock training, probably with stick. Yeah. I do not know what the story is and what this monster thing is. Holy shit, is that cool looking? Like, good Lord. Like, just out of the blue. Here comes some wild stuff. Looks like it's duotone. I mean, in some places, I'm not sure. It almost looks like a combination of a zipatone and duotone. But I'm just going to guess it's all duotone. For anybody who doesn't know, there's specific kind of boards that are built into it with a specific kind of like where you get two chemicals. I've never done it. I've only heard people explain this. Basically, on the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel, they were explaining it. So I'm kind of giving my memories, what I'm able to pull from my memory, the explanation of how it works. But the paper has this stuff built into it where you get two chemicals. And one chemical will bring out one of the lighter tones and the other chemical will bring out the darker tone. Depends on which one you use. So you get duotone, two tones, light and then a darker. So you can have your black and your white, but then you get two layers of like a gray tone to put on there. I am not a huge fan of the effect of what duotone looks like. I've seen it over a lot of art and it's used to great effect here, of course. But I don't know that. I feel like there's easier ways to get some kind of look like that than some weird chemical board, weird mess thing. I don't know. I'm never a huge fan of how it looks often, but I think it works great here. Whatever the hell this demon monster is, especially the close-up face there, that is badass. Yeah, again, whatever it is. And lots of duotone used all over the backgrounds on these things. I don't know if maybe Frank got a hair up his ass and just like, I want to try that, and thought it was interesting, so he gets really experimental with it. I don't think he sticks with it for too many pages, at least in as far as is represented in this book. I don't know. But or maybe he just wanted to use it for this scene. Gives it kind of an otherworldly feel because he's, fighting this monster thing that was just in his head, I guess. Again, no idea what the story is. More great fight scenes. Oh shit, look at Elektra stabbing this guy right through the chest and poking and pushing the shirt out. Ominous. Great continuing choreographed fight scenes. So good. Yeah. And then again, like this close up on the guy's face, there you can see how there's a lot of white paint used to like emphasize the inside rim there and some of these little details on the inside, the edge of the glasses, and then folds in his skin. And then his eyelashes there. Great inking from Klaus. Love this upper shot. Love the shot of her face. The cross-hatching lines on the shadows going down into her mouth, her lips. That looks so good. And then this face here. There's that zipatone. And then there's that painted on white, giving it that glint. Again, however he does it. I mean, I guess he just kind of gets in a center part here with the brush and then just kind of flicks those out from a center point. It's not as easy as you would think it would be. Especially the longer you get your lines, you got to really know how to control it. But it gives such a perfect little highlight glint. That is so neat. Love that page. That one looks just fantastic. Is that the Kingpin's fat ass wearing a dress? Probably not. I don't think it is. Anyway, okay, here we go. Now we have jumped into Daredevil 181. This is, like I said, this is that issue where Bullseye kills Elektra. The first comic I ever had that had Bullseye, Daredevil, Elektra, and the first Frank Miller thing I'd ever read. Formative to me in a big way. And I've stared at that original comic when I showed it on my channel. My original one is just in like the worst shape. It is just shredded. I, as a young kid, I even stapled it together because it was falling apart, but that kind of screwed it up even more. It's trashed. But to get to see the original artwork, there's been some close-up on eyes in previous pages back through here in various places, and I'm probably not going to be able to run into one quickly without just wasting time. But this is like a whole other level. I don't know if Frank was inspired and penciling it with a more greater focus on realism, or if this is Klaus just bringing it home, but those eyes are perfect. All of that organic look of the skin and the furrowed brow, and then cutting back, as I like the shot of where close up on his eyes, and then because this is Bullseye, it starts up here, and then he's intercutting his fight with Daredevil and how he's pissed off that Daredevil saved his life. But it pulls back, and it pulls back even more, and it pulls back even more, and then boom, zooms back up on his face. And that shot is incredible. The one thing that is, like, I've talked about often, how I am a huge fan, big time, of black and white artwork. But I have to say, the coloring in this issue, in the actual comic, on that old newsprint, actually works flawlessly. It's perfectly. There's some emphasis on colors that the coloring did that is just so incredibly perfect. In a way, it almost feels like it's missing something, but that's like a minor complaint. Again, you get that, looks like it's the duo shade board, giving it that shadow, the intense look on his face. That drawing is so good. Everything about that page, those eyes, the top and bottom panels are my favorite. And then again, I studied this stuff as a kid, looking at the muscular anatomy, the moves that the character would do. Again, this is my introduction to Bullseye. Bullseye was instantly a super badass. He was so incredible. I didn't know anything about him except that he's an assassin, and his whole gig is that he never misses, which I didn't know immediately, but I caught on pretty quick. And it's just so great. And then, of course, they're going to do an interview on this famed assassin in jail. So he's going through this interview. He fakes having a headache because that's a thing that's been consistent with the characters. So this guard has to give him his medicine. But it's just all a gimmick to get the pill in his mouth so he can spit it out of his mouth into the cop's eye. The cop immediately draws his gun and shoots. So Bullseye uses that because he's got a big, like a heavy metal belt on, I guess, as part of his prison attire. But he uses the bullet to break the chain on his belt. I mean, that's what that is, right? I mean, that is some kind of big heavy metal belt. That's how I always read this scene, because he could use the chains as a deflect. You know, he's using the chains to get busted because of the bullet shooting. But I also thought that it impacted on his gut. But that's because he's got a heavy metal belt on that's part of his shackles. Am I reading that right? Anyway, bullet breaks the chain. So now he's got his hands free. He kicks the guy in the face. Now he's got a gun. And he uses the microphone from the interviewer to swing it around like a weapon to grab onto people and choke them. I was like, holy shit. As a kid, reading this stuff, I'm like, I had been reading comics for a little while, but I'm like, no one had ever choreographed a fight like this in a way that made sense. Like, I understand in a very cool action movie way, like how he gets out. Like, there's a thought and a logic to every move. This was just mind-blowing. And again, to get to see this art in its original form. Shoots a cop that gave him shit earlier. Bunch of zipatone all through these pages. Looks fantastic. Again, look at these pages chopped up on the corners. God, it's so obnoxious. Love this shot right here. I've always thought this was a great panel in the comic, but getting to see it up close, it's kind of complicated because they're like down by the dock. So here's the actual dock up high, but then there's this kind of like living quarters underneath the dock where the building itself is like right on the water's edge. You can see the reflection. I don't like, is that a thing? I don't know, but I like how he's kind of like almost hiding under the docks, and then you got the guy's hand is reaching out the window so he can, ash, and there's little white highlights here as he's ashing his cigarette and it's dropping into the water. But then there's this white smoke that's partially left open from the black ink line, but then it's been painted over with like white paint to give it kind of a hazy smoke effect as it comes up. And then the zipatone in the sky in the background, the building in the background that's all black and then comes into like a brick pattern as it comes down to a light source. There's like a white highlight around the top of these dock pier, structural posts. Just everything about that panel blows my mind. I would never conceive of how to draw something like that. I've always thought that side view of that face, like I'm guessing that's referenced off something. There's just a higher level of art in this issue from Frank and Klaus than the previous stuff. However, whenever that comes about, I don't know. Love that shot. And then of course, we cut over a couple. This is page 17. Now we jump to 21. Again, getting into the entire fight scene between Bullseye and Elektra. The entire scene is in this book. I was actually kind of shocked. Like every page is there. And it's fantastic. It's so cool. I was kind of blown away as a kid, like how this guy could take a playing card and flick it and cut a guy's throat. I'm like, oh shit, that's so dangerous. What a badass. There's more of that zipatone and then white paint painted on top of the zip for the smoke effect. And then even this, like the car pulling away and like the exhaust, it's kind of like the paint is like dabbed on there. Really interesting stuff. But yeah, in one of what is to me probably, I struggle to think of a fight scene in a comic that's better than this. I'm not saying that there isn't, and I would be interested to have anybody kind of submit other potential possibilities for a fight scene between two characters that's better choreographed, has more anticipation and getting your ducks in a row in terms of the characters and the build-up previous issues to have these two run into each other and have the emotional weight of how this thing ends. Because it can't just be like, put two characters together and have them fight. But it's the encompassing story of how we've been introduced to Elektra. We know Bullseye. I don't know that they've ran into each other yet, but by the time they get to here, we know the characters, we know who they are, and who's going to win this fight. And by God, I don't think anybody would have ever predicted the outcome of this fight. Now, of course, everyone watching this, you know what happens, but I submit this as maybe the best fight in comics. And if it's not, it's in the top 10 for sure, top 5 probably. But for me, it's kind of the best. Love the shot. Great eyes. Great texture in her eyes. Great inking on the lips. It's funny because the lips are really white as compared to the yellowing of the rest of the page. So I wonder if he did one thing and didn't like it, so he had to white it out and then re-ink over it. If Klaus did, God, does that still look great? But she's supposed to kill Foggy Nelson, and he recognizes her as Matt Murdock's old girlfriend. He's like, I know who you are, Elektra. And she's like, get out of here. So she can't go with it. And then again, silent fight scene in terms of there's no text box. She lets him go, and she's just kind of there with her head down, kind of like thinking about, the Kingpin sent me on this gig to kill him. And how is she going to get out of this? There's that gun. That is a very specific, I want to say that's a German-made firearm. It's interesting that Frank wants to have Bullseye have that gun specifically. But I like how he just comes out and he's like, he thinks he's going to get the drop on her. Like, this is an easy kill. Like, Bullseye doesn't want to, like, he's not, I don't want the challenge of fighting her. He's going to fucking kill her. But I like how she's 100% aware. Just this simple shot of her eye looking behind her. And then one of my favorite fight scenes ever. Flip back, kicks him in the face, disarms him, gets the gun out of his hand, takes her weapon, puts it right across his chin, boom, 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 jumps, he dives out of the way, she shatters the window of the car, and then she immediately reverses, kicks him in the spine, sends him flying. I was like, holy shit, as a kid, again, however old I was when I got that book, 10 or 11, Like, I thought it was amazing, but I didn't have enough comics reading under my belt yet to understand how great this was, but it just gets more interesting and better with time. Holy shit, did they take a chainsaw to this fucking book? Corners, just rip it apart. This brilliant page. But yeah, kicks the shit out of Bullseye. And the text from him, he's like, holy shit, she's good. She's been trained by ninjas. He's like, I better be careful with her. So again, he's kind of sneaking around in the dark. There's more of those great white highlight flicks for the glinting weapon. But again, Bullseye, he's no fool. He's a badass. She tries to swing her weapon at him, but he ducks and puts his... I have to imagine this is a specific thing, but the way that Frank Miller choreographed the fight, it's one thing if he like punches her in the guts or something like that, or kicks her in the back, but he has him go for her head multiple times, which is like, that's how you disorient a person and fuck him up. He puts a foot straight in her face. Then he puts a knee straight to her chin. And then she slices at him, just barely cuts his face. She dives at him. He kicks her again, a heel kick to the jaw. Like, that's boom, boom, boom. 3 big shots from a big man punching a woman straight in the face with his, like, all of them are with his feet and his knees. Like, that would knock anybody fucking cold. And of course, Elektra's a badass, but I'm like, that makes sense how he could defeat her by just taking his, like, legs and knees to her face multiple times. Boom, boom, boom. I like how she pulls her bandana off and wraps it around him as if to choke him. Love that shot of her. So great. And then once again, continuing the motif of him fucking up her head, he slams her skull down onto the pavement. Boom. And she's like dazed. And of course, the classic scene right here spread across this shit. He's like, you're good. You're pretty good, but I'm magic. Takes that card, flicks it right into her throat. And then this shot of her, like, she's kind of like, she's lost all her strength and her power with that kind of, the way her knees are kind of turned in and the way her feet is kind of a weak pose because, of course, she's got the shit beat out of her and her throat cut. The way he picks her up and this kind of like weakened, dazed look in her face. And like, I couldn't believe you could do this in a comic. This is a brutal, straight, hardcore murder. The look on his face, and he's like, for my next trick, and that incredible shot of him just stabbing her straight through the chest, the blade piercing the back of her outfit. Shocking that they could get away with this. This stuff looks so great in these multiple panels. Again, no words. Thank you, Frank Miller, for having the good sense, like some other creators don't have, of shutting the fuck up and let the visuals tell the story. There's no text anywhere that anybody could conceive of in my mind that would make this scene better. It's just silent. Stabs her, and he's won. And so he just kind of like watches her. Now, of course, if you're stabbed through the heart and bleeding that hard, like she traverses what seems to be several blocks to end up on the doorstep of Matt Murdock. And this is a comic book, and narratively it works perfectly, but realistically, she'd never fucking make it 5 feet with a stabbed heart and bleeding that much blood. But I love that she's crawling away. She falls to the ground. She gets back up. And Bullseye is just following her quietly because, of course, he wants to confirm that Murdock is Daredevil. And the first thing she does is crawls right to his house, and she dies in his arms. There's that inside front cover image right there of those things. And then in the original book, the coloring on this is all kind of like, I think, one kind of monochromatic color, except for a bright yellow on Bullseye flicking open his lighter. So great. And then that's page 29. We're moving on to page 31 here. Another one of my favorite scenes, because Bullseye, now that he's got the idea that Murdock is Daredevil, he follows them to the hospital where he kind of sneaks into the emergency room or whatever, where there's the doctor and Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson as the doctor is explaining how Daredevil or how Elektra's dead. It's like multiple concussions, stab wounds, lacerated throat, heart pierced by something metal, you know. And Bullseye, he's not 100% sure. So he sneaks in, and you just think that, again, Bullseye thinks that no one knows he's there. And if it's anybody else on the planet, no one does know he's there. So he just kind of casually snags a scalpel and then just casually just flicks it at Daredevil. And it would have gone straight into his head. Now, that wasn't to kill the man, but... And I love, like, this just illustrates that Murdock 100% knew that Bullseye was there. And he just quietly flicks his club up, thunk, just to block it. And then there goes Bullseye running off. He's like, fuck, that's Daredevil. I had a doubt that Murdoch, the blind lawyer, is Daredevil. That's all the proof he needs. It's such a brilliant storytelling scene. It's one of the best, most perfect scenes in any comic I've ever seen. This entire issue was absolutely brilliant. And then, unfortunately, there's not much more of this issue. There's a whole fight between Bullseye and Daredevil. I would love to have had every page of that book in this thing. We don't get much more. There's that great shot of Daredevil smacking the shit out of him. And so they have a big fight. And then I think that was it, because that was issue 181. Now we're up to 184, and I've never seen these issues. So the best part of this book, the most interesting stuff, we were now past. Doesn't make it any less interesting. It's just fantastic, amazing stuff. Again, Frank Miller story and art, but then Janson finished art. So I would love to know what these penciled pages look like, just to have some kind of sense of how much the pencils, how light they were, how basic they were, versus what Clowes brings to it specifically. Again, down here, Miller says scripter and storyteller. But then this one, Klaus Janson is penciler, inker, and colorist. So Klaus Janson did everything except the lettering. So Frank Miller is still scripter and storyteller. So this is where I also feel like there's an argument to be made that Klaus Janson deserves way more credit for the beauty of the finished art. Because now in this, at least this one issue, at least, it's Klaus Janson, penciler, inker, and colorist. To the casual eye, and kind of to me, I don't see a difference. Like, there are some things where I'm like, this feels Frank Miller-ish, but not exactly. But to just a regular person looking at that, you probably wouldn't even notice that it's a different artist. Love this shot of Daredevil sitting outside the window with the heavy shadows on him. And then the city line in the background being white, and then the Zipatone. But I mean, again, like I said, to the casual viewer, do you really look and see much of a difference? I do see a little bit of a difference. But holy shit, is that great. Look at the lighting choices, the rendering on this. I would never in a million years think to draw anything like that. The choice of like the cross-hatching lines coming up, the way the fist is rendered, the lighting on the underside of the face, this cross-hatchy, scratchy background. It looks so great. But like, I'm just repeating myself, and I'm sorry, but I'm like, does the casual viewer know that this isn't Frank Miller anymore? It looks just like his work. It's like a 85 to 90% looks just like him. I don't know. So he deserves way more credit. These shots, I guess his senses are picking up, like the sound is like his hearing is going crazy, so he's kind of going nuts. But this is just crazy how it's such a close approximation. And it looks fantastic still. Now, this one, again, this issue, Frank Miller, writer, storyteller, Klaus Janson, penciler, inker, colorist. Like, good Lord, what an incredible cityscape. I love that. It looks like such an old school, old New York. The water towers, the heavy lighting on them, the Zipatone. I love the billboard here and the Zipatone with the split kind of like the highlight of the lights casting the light down on that. Like, that takes some real understanding to give them the curves like that from the above light source. But yeah, it's just all Klaus Janson. It's just so close. Like, heavy Zipatone, got Black Widow in here. Love that shot. Love the ink lines everywhere. That heavily lit shadowed face. God damn, is that good. So much Zipatone all over the place. That is the Black Widow, right? Yeah, Natasha. Like, she always was illustrated with the short hair and that Zipatone outfit. Great cityscape down there. Holy shit. And then the zip skyline in the background. God damn, is this stuff great. Makes me want to draw. Makes me want to get out a brush and start inking. Another issue. Janson, penciler, inker, colorist. Love the framing of it. The heavy, like, alleyway, heavy shadowed, and then I'm guessing hand ninja. and then the building in the background with the zipatone over it, and then lines to show it's raining. And the one window we're focused on, it's a bright little white highlight to focus on what, so we understand what they are looking at. Simple but brilliant. Brilliant stuff. And then again, that heavy shadowed, great inking. God damn, all this stuff looks good. I know Klaus Janson can draw. I'm not surprised in the slightest. I'm like, I didn't know Klaus could draw. Of course he can. I've known that for a long time. But just seeing how good he was and just picking up and doing all the art duties, it's fantastic. What a great shot. Is this still Klaus exclusively? Not sure. Great shot. All of this stuff. In a way, this stuff almost looks like it would work better as a black and white comic. It would work just as effectively. If they were to re-release this comic, just re-release the entire series, just in black and white, I think that you'd have a hit on your hands. I would definitely be picking it up. We're going long here, so let's get through this. It says Frank Miller and Janson. Looks like it's more of the duo shade. Really interesting. Love the facial structure, especially the eyes and the way that nose is drawn. That is so well done. I'm going to say probably use some reference, which I'm not, that's not a complaint, but like that, fuck, does that look good. Very moody, very evocative, just like nothing like that. What I thought was interesting here, back with Frank Miller, writer and penciler, now you got Terry Austin inking him. Terry Austin, I know specifically, is the inker over John Byrne. I've come to understand Terry Austin's ink line a little bit better as time has gone on. I've had some kind of, I know like inker, I know Chuck Gibson, he's a professional inker, and he's kind of given me a lot of tips and knowledge and personal inside information. And I've come to recognize a little bit a Terry Austin ink line in this era. It's a little bit flatter, like a dead line. There's not like thick to thin transitions in the way that Klaus Janson's ink lines would look like. I'm trying to find like these are more haphazard, organic, and I mean that in every way that's positive. The way that Klaus inks his lines, but see how they're thick to thin. But Terry Austin seems like, for the most part, he's kind of got like a more of a dead line, like a singular straight, like a not a lot of line width variation. There obviously is in some places. I'm speaking in broad generalities, and I'm also not saying it as a negative. I think it looks good. It's a different vibe to Frank's pencils, which it does say he's penciling again, but having Terry Austin on it, I don't know, I would have identified that originally if I didn't have someone tell me. But when I get told that's Terry Austin ink line, I kind of see it. I get it. And like this does not look like the way the Klaus would have inked this. This is definitely a different vibe, and it looks great, but it is different. Really good stuff. More great pages, more... This looks like more of a modern drawing from Frank. I'm looking to see if there's a date on there. But this thing, oh yeah, look, this is another thing because it's a scan. There's the duo shade board. I'm guessing the original artwork must look like. They've got this duo shade. Let's see if I can read what it says. 2 hidden shades, light and dark. Graphics light tone developer. Number 1 brings up, and then of course it disappears off page. Be sure to clean brushes or pens. It is advisable to have different brush or pen for each developer, so each tone. Really interesting. I've never even noticed that before. That's really fun. But then this thing flips out. Look at this. God, is that awesome. Holy shit, look at that. Holy duo shade background. God, I bet that was time consuming. Frank Miller and Klaus. That is incredible. What a great shot. I'm not going to, but I kind of want to tear this out and frame it and hang it on my wall. That is fucking fantastic. I can't get over. Look at the elevated shot in perspective of this cityscape below him in the duo shade. It is kind of interesting how it's just kind of like a flat over here, but then it gets a little bit vague, but then it gets really sharp as we get closer to these buildings. What a pain in the ass that must have been, but it works. God damn, is that cool. I don't know if I've ever seen this before. Very cool. And then there's another interesting shot of Elektra. Again, I'm looking for a date on this, but it seems to be like a more modern version of Frank's art. I like how he gives her like rippling muscles. Like he didn't draw her like that in the previous books. I think it's an interesting design. I like that. Spider-Man, Elektra, Wolverine. So other bits of art that he's done. Going to kind of zip through some of these. Frank Miller doing Spider-Man. Look at that one. More of that duo shade and interesting use of the design elements with the color behind it. But you got the name Elektra, the block of color shape that she's just posed on, the block coming off her weapon there. In fact, both weapons. There you go. That's interesting. The weapon coming down and the shade coming off it there. The same thing here. Fantastic. Really interesting. Very stylized. Lots of, looks like duo shade use all through this. Yep. Oh, in fact, there it is. There's even that edge that's indicating the duo shade board right there in front of my eyes. We're almost done. I didn't think this would go long, but holy shit. What an awesome page. Yeah, that's Wolverine fighting a bunch of hand ninjas, arrows everywhere. Again, those designs, I'm like, the first time I ever saw that was Jim Lee doing it in those Uncanny X-Men issues. Love it. That's what ninjas look like in my head. Great double page spread. Great shots of Wolverine stabbing the shit out of people wearing little lampshades for helmets. That's really cool. I didn't know. I've seen this image before, but I've never known that shot of Punisher holding Captain America at gunpoint was a Frank Miller drawing. Had no idea. That's awesome. I learned something today. And then, of course, the cover galleries. These are always fun. There's your cover to the book. God Lord, is that yellowed. Somebody took a piss all over it. The one I'm looking for, the 181. God, these are all great. That looks fantastic. There's Matt fighting that demon thing. Classic shot of Elektra with the sai stabbing through his mask. There it is. There's that cover to that book, that duo shade. I remember looking at the original cover on the comic and seeing these weird tones and lines. I'm like, how do you do that? How do you do that? I don't get it. Of course, now I understand. Fantastic cover. And then, of course, Matt making sweet love to Elektra's gravestone. The gun pointing at you. That's awesome. That shot of Daredevil and Black Widow. That looks freaking badass. That is so great. I'm guessing this is a much newer. Again, it's not dated. But Frank Miller didn't always sign his name, just a little FM. That feels like a more modern as opposed to like years removed from the 80s version of Daredevil that he's doing. This is more of his Sin City shit. That looks awesome. I got to say, that looks really cool. Daredevil all in black and just the gloves and the boots. I saw Joe Quesada would kind of do a style like that when he did his Daredevil run. That shit looks awesome. I'm a big fan of that. That shot there looks great too. Yeah, I love that one. That's inspiring. More Elektra stuff, of course. Those classic Wolverine covers. Weird Spider-Man. I heard a lot of people say that Frank did a little tiny run on Spider-Man and they always wanted to see more. That's interesting. Again, that dual shade city shot in the background. Very interesting take on Spider-Man. Very different. God, how do you do this with the Zipatone? You just cut out all these windows? Oh my God, would that be tedious? But the end result is awesome. There's a Doctor Strange. There's a Wolverine. There's a classic Bullseye smoking. Daredevil standing there. Elektra standing there. And then, of course, a breakdown of Frank Miller and his background. And then, anyway, Fantastic addition to my artist editions. Big fan. Like I said, I know I've got 2 more coming. Well, I haven't ordered the Rob Liefeld Youngblood one, but I will. I do have the J. Scott Campbell Danger Girl coming. So this is fantastic. The artistic skill in this, I'd have to say, in terms of artistic skill used in this, that is the most shocking in terms of how good the art obviously is. Um, you know, I'm going to say the artistic skill in this one is probably better than any of the others. The only one I give a kind of a run for its money is the John Byrne work in this X-Men one. These old school artists just putting pencil and ink on paper and using all kinds of different techniques to give atmospheric mood and style and vibes to everything. Like just revolutionary art in comic books. Like these guys took it seriously and made real fantastic true art. And I mean, I'm glad to have any of these, and there's a ton of artists I wish they would make an artist edition of, so I'll be glad for everyone that I'm lucky enough to get my hands on. But classic masters, and I'm glad I got to add the Daredevil one to my collection now. So that's all I've got. Almost an hour. Thank you for joining me. If you stay along for the whole thing, I appreciate it. I hope that this stuff was as fascinating to you as it is to me. Like I said, I found this on Amazon. I just randomly looked. And they had it for like $48, $49. So if you want one, go look. Maybe that deal is still there. That's the time to buy it. Like, holy shit. I was like, how did I, fuck, I'll buy that for that cost. Anyway, that's all I've got for this one. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'll see you next time.